Breaking news tonight from Axios. Leaked remarks from President Trump to RNC donors at Mar-a-Lago on Friday. According to three sources, the president addressed the controversy over Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's comments that many found anti-Semitic by saying, quote, "The Democrats hate Jewish people." Based on Axios' reporting, Trump said he did not understand how Jewish people could vote for a Democrat these days. Guests told Axios the president touted all he had done with Israel, noting his historic decision to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The president even reportedly mused that if he could run for prime minister of Israel, he'd be at 98% in the polls. The comments the president made behind closed doors go a step further than what he told White House reporters on Friday.
The Democrats have become an anti-Israel party. They've become an anti-Jewish party. And I thought that vote was a disgrace. And so does everybody else if you get an honest answer.
With that, I'd like to welcome in my panel Axios' Jonathan Swan with the big scoop tonight in his sneak peek newsletter, Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason, and Director of Strategic Communications for the Trump 2020 re-election campaign, Mark Lauder. Jonathan Swan, I will start with you. Take us behind the scenes of these remarks. I mean, you say you had three sources telling you that this is what happened in the room, but it sounds like they went to some lengths to try to get this from getting out there.
It was actually in the tent, is the right way to describe it. So they erected a tent over the pool at Mar-a-Lago with a platform, beautiful tent with linen, you know, chandeliers, and this time, because they didn't want any leaking, they made all the guests put their cell phones into pouches with magnets. So you had them in these magnetized pouches, and then you could only unmagnetize it when you left. But people remember things, and they, you know, store things in their mind. So yeah, what you set up is exactly right. I should add, like, this was received incredibly well in the room, you know, roaring laughter, cheers, etc. And this was, you know, Trump taking it to another level. I don't think I've heard him say flat out, Democrats hate Jewish people, but that was a direct quote.
Well, let's ask Jeff Mason, who covers the White House every day.
Haven't heard him say that, no. But I think what's important here is to look at Jonathan's reporting and analyze what the president is doing. This is building on what he said on Friday to White House reporters. He's trying to paint himself as the only candidate who should be getting Jewish votes in 2020 and trying to paint the Democratic Party with the broad brush because of something that one congressperson said. Now, clearly it's created some challenges for the Democratic Party, but it is not true to say that all Democrats hate Jews.
Mark Lauder, do you agree? You're the spokesman for the president's campaign. I mean, do you think that Democrats hate Jewish people?
I'm not going to use that language specifically, but I think it's important for this message to get out that there are many things that the Democrats have done in recent years, not just in recent months with one congresswoman's quotes. Let's remember that President Obama was widely and correctly called the most anti-Israel president in U.S. history, and that is something that many people remember. I think this is building on what the president did during the 2016 campaign when he would go to different voting blocks, and maybe some that didn't always vote Republican, traditionally voted Democrat, and said, give us a chance. Look what we can do for you. And I think so what he's making the case is he's showing, in many cases, the actions of the Democratic Party have not been in the favor of Israel, and this is just the latest example of it.
If this is the case, though, why are the members of Congress who are Jewish, the elected people, overwhelmingly Democrats? There are only a handful of Jewish Republicans.
And I understand, and it's a long historic trend. But I think what the president is saying is that it's time for people to maybe break through those traditional political allegiances. Take a look at the results in terms of things that have happened, not only just under President Trump, but also go back and look at some of the things that have happened in recent years. As I said, with President Obama, you had the U.S. abstaining on UN action that condemned Israel. First time that in a long time, or if ever, that we had done that under the previous administration. There are a lot of things that the Republicans and President Trump's doing that's pro-Israel.
And do you think that adds up to Democrats hating Jewish people?
I think that there has been a lot of anti-Jewish action and sentiment and anti-Israel action and sentiment that has been shown by Democrats in recent years, and this is the president highlighting it.
Okay. Jonathan Swan, setting that aside for a second, there was a lot more in the remarks. There was a comment specifically about blackface as well. What was said?
The way it was described to me by 3 separate people who were in the tent was Trump went on a tangent about how he was home alone at the White House over Christmas, and he described this scene of opening the curtain and looking out the window and seeing Secret Service agents with night vision goggles, and he joked that they were in blackface because they had masks on, and he said, and now they're in blackface, so we need to get rid of them or something. He was clearly making a joke about Ralph Northam and the whole controversy in Virginia. But it did sound a little, you know, when he goes on those tangents. It sounded a bit like
yeah. So, Mark Lauder, you're kind of on the spot here tonight with a lot of these comments. But, I mean, is it acceptable ever to joke about blackface?
I think what the president was, he was joking about the fact that these tactical gear and the tactical masks that are worn by the U.S. Secret Service are black, and that given the recent comment and controversies, maybe they would have to change that. It was a joke. And, again, I think your reporting indicated that people laughed and saw that for what that was.
So it was a joke, and also our Republican donors in the room thought it was funny.
You're reporting on that. I was not in the room, so.
Do you dispute any of this as the spokesman for the Trump campaign? Do you dispute anything that
I wasn't there? I checked when I saw Jonathan's report tonight. I checked with some folks who also weren't there, but heard very similar stories from folks that they had talked to that were there. This is not. I think what is very important though is the context. I mean, this is the president holding court, so to speak, with some close advisors, friends, longtime Mar-a-Lago guests, and Republican donors. He's telling stories. He's recounting various things. This is not prepared remarks of anything. It's the president up there engaging with folks. That was well received, according to your reporting, Jonathan. And I think that's what it was intended to be. Very just informal storytelling and
so you're
entertaining
saying this
the crowd.
is sort of normal.
I was saying that he was entertaining a crowd on many issues. It wasn't just these. Obviously, those were the things that you've highlighted. But it was a pretty long, from what I understand, he spoke for a while.
Jeff Mason, you've covered many presidents. How would you characterize this sort of language towards Jewish people, the joking about blackface, compared to other presidents that you've covered?
Well, I mean, I think it's been 2 years that President Trump has been in office, and he ran the 2016 campaign and busted through a lot of norms. So I think we're seeing that happen here, too, and that's no doubt going to continue happening in the next couple of years. But it is a norm that's being busted through. It is unusual.
Understatement. So Republican donors also told Jonathan that the president insisted on Friday that he never called Apple CEO Tim Cook Tim Apple. The sources say the president claimed it was, quote, fake news, and told them that he actually said Tim Cook Apple, but just said it really fast, and that the Cook part was too soft. Let's go to the videotape on that.
We have so many companies coming in. People like Tim, you're expanding all over and doing things that I really wanted you to do right from the beginning. I used to say, Tim, you got to start doing it over here, and you really have. I mean, you've really put a big investment in our country. We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
Did you hear Cook? Anyone hear Cook?
There's definitively not a word between Tim and Apple in that video.
Okay. Seriously, though, this is not the first time the president has disputed something that we've seen on a videotape. Jonathan Swan.
Yeah, I mean, he privately, and the New York Times reported this, told at least one senator that that the Access Hollywood tape that recorded him speaking lewdly about women, that it might have been a fake voice. That was last year, so he'd obviously already admitted that it was him. So
right, and this points to a bigger problem, Jeff, because if anything, we dealt with problems in the 2016 election with, fake news, false news on Facebook, and the next frontier of this is fake video.
Yeah.
Which I think, none of us may be prepared to grapple with.
Yeah, no, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for everyone who's reporting on the president, for reporting on the campaign, but it's also a challenge for voters to decide what they can accept or tolerate from a leader or a candidate who says one thing when there's evidence very clear evidence that goes against what he or she is saying.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.